Hello students, good evening and welcome to my 10 minutes math channel. This is teacher Brenda and today we would be looking into the topic of time. All right, and part 1 of time talks about the definition of time, what is time, and the tools that we can use to measure it. So let's move on to our slides. Here we go. As you can see on the screen, okay, what exactly do we understand by the term time, okay, by the word time? So just imagine if you had a football game, but there was no time limit to it, then the game wouldn't be a game in the first place. Now, remember the time when you were born, your birthday. It has a particular date and a month and a year to it. So time can actually be defined as a sequence or an ongoing sequence of events. It can be anything, okay, that has happened in the past or could be happening now in the present or could also be happening in the future. For example, I've planned to go shopping next week or this weekend. So we give a particular date or time or, some sort of hour or minutes to it, in fact. So how do we measure time? So we can measure time using various tools. One of the most common things that you would have seen by now and even used is the clock. The clock is a tool that we use to measure time. Now let's go back a little and, let's see how time has been many years ago. Even before we came to the idea of having time, about 200,000 years ago, human beings started to walk on Earth. And of course, we came from the ape species, okay? So from there, we evolved. It took us time to reach where we are today. So that is 200,000. Now remember, we are now currently in year 2021, all right? So if I were to draw a line here like this, okay, and I would put here 2021 here, this is like year 2021. Imagine going back 2021 years and I would reach time zero. Now, time zero doesn't mean time has stopped. It means that practically we on Earth have accepted that there was a point where time was calculated as 0 years. And that was believed to be the time Jesus Christ was born. So whatever years or whatever things that happened before the year zero, like for example, the evolution of human beings, or when did dinosaurs live, or how old is Earth for the matter of fact, it all is considered BC. You would hear this term BC. Now, BC means before Christ. So the year Christ was born was taken to be the year zero, okay? This is when Jesus Christ was born, and from then onwards, time was calculated as per the calendar that we use. So let's move on to see other things. The next slide here is, have you wondered how people in ancient times, okay, perhaps they were living in caves, the Paleolithic men, how did they calculate or how did they know time? How did they recognize time? Now, they would have recognized time based on two things. They would have seen when the sun rose, it was daytime. And when the moon came up, they would recognize that as nighttime. When the sun set and the moon came up, they would just know that is the first basic understanding of time, daytime and nighttime. Daytime, there is light from the sun, and nighttime, there's also light from the moon, although not as much as the sun. And the moon, of course, has its phases, okay? It's from full moon to new moon. It takes about 2 weeks, in and out. So that's how not just people, but even animals today would recognize time. They would sense the time. They do not have watches like us, animals. So they would sense time based on the days, when it's daylight, daytime, or some animals, as you know, they are only active during the night. So that was how time was determined many years ago, before we invented the calendars and the watch. However, there's also this thing called seasons. Okay, seasons is perhaps a couple of months where the weather stays the same. So human beings started to realize that there was a time when there were lots of flowers blooming around. Okay, and they came to see that plants started to grow very well during this time, and they named it as spring. Okay, then they realized that the weather was changing and it was getting a little hotter, probably at some places really hot, and they called it summer. Today, if it's really hot, these places can easily catch fire. We call it bushfires happening all over the world during summertime. Then they saw that after this real hot season, the leaves started withering, they started falling, and some call it fall, or another word for it would be autumn. Okay, that was the season where the leaves all started to drop, and you'd have beautiful colors sometimes, like browns and greens and oranges that you would see sometimes in beautiful pictures. And it was getting cooler as well. From that hot season in the summer, they realized that the temperatures were dropping, things were becoming cooler, and finally it became really very cold, and people started to call it winter. So these are the four seasons, that is experienced by certain countries. In a country like ours, Malaysia, we don't have the spring, summer, autumn, winter. We only have rain and sunshine throughout the year. Okay, so it's like summer all the time. Okay, but we have lots of rain as well. It's not just dry. Okay, so that's because we are very near to the center of the earth, which we call as the equatorial line. Now, all these you would learn when you're much older, especially when you go learn when you are learning geography. Okay, so these kind of things you would learn, and how the seasons of certain countries really depends on which part of the earth they are. So let's move on then. Okay, so from this understanding of there are four seasons, okay, we move on to learning how would we measure time. What are the tools that people used to measure time, especially ancient devices? Okay, so if you look here, the first one, you see a water clock. Now, this is something like, okay, let's say we're going to start a game, okay, or play a game of chess, all right? And we wanted to see, how long it would take, or give a time, a certain time to it. You could put water until it dripped out, and then, you could actually have a time duration there. So all these devices, if you actually notice, there'd be two things. Either they're trying to tell a time, like a sundial or a shadow clock, or they're trying to measure a certain time duration, like a candle clock or an hourglass or a water clock. Okay, it measures how long an event can happen. Say, assuming they wanted to run an exam or conduct an exam, and they said, I'm going to use a candle clock. So by the time the candle burns out, you're going to finish the exam, something like that. An hourglass, where the sand goes through, and then they would just flip it the other way around and, restart the whole process again. So these are some of the ancient devices that were used to measure time. All right. And what about modern then? What about the modern devices? Okay, over here, you see that we have something called the pendulum clock or the pendulum watch. Some of you might see slightly taller structures. We call them grandfather or grandmother clocks. And the word pendulum means this little thing that's swinging from left to right. This is the pendulum. All right, so it will sway from left to right, and sometimes at certain quarters of the day, like when it's the first quarter or the second quarter or the third quarter, that means quarter means every 15 minutes, it can have a little music, to it, and sort of remind people, okay, quarter hour of the day has gone, half an hour has gone, and then when the hour rings, it will go like ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding. That's like 2 o'clock. All right. I knew this because I grew up with one. All right. So let's go on to then the pocket watch. Okay. A pocket watch is something that you can carry in your pocket. You'd see sometimes in movies, those maybe 1900s or what, they're probably popular with this kind of watches. Then, of course, the all time, we have got so many brands today, the popular wristwatch. And probably you guys are more on the digital age, so you would be familiar with the digital watch. Now, the digital watch today, you can even receive calls on them, through it. So this is another modern one. It's the atomic clock. And coming back to the digital and the wristwatch, as you can see, here you can see a clock face. And here it becomes important for you to be able to read time. Okay, no matter, even though you are living in a modern age and you're using all this digital clock, okay, you still need to know how to be able to read time using the old-fashioned methods, that's using a clock face like this, and even better, in fact, prepare yourselves to be able to read the time of the day, especially from a sundial or a shadow clock. If you Google up, there are many resources on how to build your own sundial or shadow clock, and you can come up with one and read the time of the day based on the shadow of the sun, all right, or where the shadow falls. So the last part of our lesson today is having a good estimation, which means using our logic sense. We now need to figure out how long it will take us to do something. And so, as I told you, we use tools to measure, okay, all those different types of clocks. However, there are also units in time, okay? Units are like for example, like seconds and minutes and hours and weeks and months and days, and years and centuries. These are all the units of time. Okay, so let's look at the first situation here, the duration of a sunlight in a day. How long do we have sunlight? So do we have it for only 50 seconds, or do we have it for 36 minutes, or do we have it generally for about 9 hours? So yes, we experience sunlight for at least about 9 hours. So this is estimating, having a good understanding on time, okay, a logical understanding. Let's look at question number 2. Here we have a Christmas break. Now, would a Christmas break be about 6 hours, or would it be for 2 weeks, or would we celebrate it for 8 months? So yes, the answer is definitely not 6 hours, no 8 months, that's too long. But yes, 2 weeks is a general time taken to celebrate Christmas. How about to skip 25 times? How long would it take us? 7 minutes or 12 hours or 4 days? Can you imagine skipping for 12 hours or 4 days? Really doesn't make sense. So all these questions here is more about making sense. How about the duration of a lightning stroke? 11 hours, 3 seconds, or just 25 or 25 minutes? So yes, 3 seconds, 25 minutes can be a little threatening already, but a lightning stroke can only happen for a very few seconds, okay? Although the whole thunderstorm or the rain can take much longer, okay? Coming here to the spring season, okay? Spring is one of the seasons, as I mentioned earlier. Does it last for a day, or does it last for about a good 2 weeks, or is it 3 months long? Now, for those who do not really know much about these seasons, let me show you this. This is example a year, okay? Just imagine if I could draw a year in a rectangle like this. Now, a year has got 12 months. We all know that. And I mentioned earlier that we have 4 seasons. So I'm going to divide this into 4 parts. This is almost looking like a fraction. So how many would each part be? So I'm going to take 12 and divide into 4, and I will have 3. So as I told you, a year has 4 seasons in certain countries again. So this is like spring, then followed by summer, the hot season, then autumn or fall, and then we have winter. So every season is basically about 3 months long. All right. So with that said, okay, I'm ending my short little quick introduction on the lesson of time. I hope you have learned a little, enjoyed the lesson, and if you like it, then hit the like button and click on the bell button and subscribe. Okay, see you then in the next lesson. Bye.